if we could have the Pledge of Allegiance by Mr. Heschler, that would be wonderful.
Of course. I pledge allegiance to the flag
To the flag
of
of the United States of America and to the
republic
for which it stands,
one
one nation, under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
with liberty and justice for all. Very good. Thank you, Mr. Heschler. And if we could have roll call, please.
Roll call, Chair Baldino, currently absent. Vice Chair Newman.
She is present.
Commissioner Heschler.
He is present.
Commissioner Kildoff.
I am here.
And Commissioner Magai. He looks like he's not present yet either.
Okay. Item D would be public communications related to city business only and for which the planning commission is responsible, 5 minutes per person, 30 minutes total. Do we have any public communications at all that we're aware of? No, then we will move on.
Nothing received.
Okay, thank you. Written communications. Are there any written communications other than what is in our agenda packet? Anybody know of none? No? Very good. Item number F is consent calendar, the expansion of the recreational vehicle storage facility. And I see that it has been asked to be continued to further notice. So with that, if we could just take a vote on that. Do I hear a motion to continue this item?
Sure.
I'll make a motion to continue.
Go ahead, Michelle.
I'll make a motion to continue this item.
Do I hear a second?
Is it to the next?
Okay.
Yeah, and what is it? Is it to the next meeting? And what's the story on that?
Eduardo? Mr. Cook?
No, right now it'll be continued, and when we have a date certain, we'll go ahead and notice it, but we'll try to get it on to the next meeting if possible. But at this point, it's looking like one of the meetings in August.
Okay.
Okay. So it's been moved and seconded, and all those in favor? Aye.
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 All right. Therefore, we shall have that most likely to the next meeting, Eduardo says. Perfect.
And
Next
I-
item.
Excuse me, Vice.
Yeah.
Excuse me, Vice Chair Newman, I just want the record to reflect that Commissioner Magai has joined in.
Very good. Let's wait till he gets his video up and running and his audio working, okay? I see his name there.
Hi, good evening. Sorry I'm late.
We're glad you're here.
I'll turn on my video in 1 minute. Settling in here, sorry.
Traffic is bad this time of the year, huh, Kevin? Working on it. There he is.
Hey. Hello.
Welcome. Okay. All right. Item G is continued business, public hearing regarding EA-1302 zone text amendment number 21-02, adding a section to the El Segundo Municipal Code regarding parking requirements for religious institution affiliated housing. And the project address is citywide. The applicant is the city. So could we have a report on that, please?
Of course. Does everyone see my screen here?
Yep.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. Let's see if I can enlarge that. Or if that worked or not. Probably not. Okay. So the item before you tonight is a result of an assembly bill that went into effect earlier this year and limits the number of parking spaces a local agency may require in connection with any religious institution of affiliated housing developments. After careful consideration and review of our zoning code, our city attorney looked through that and encouraged us to move forward with a zone text amendment for this, which we are now presenting to you. A couple points about AB 51 in terms of what it does and what it limits the cities. It prohibits cities from requiring replacement parking, correcting nonconformities that may exist on religious institutions or church properties, and prohibits cities from denying a project if it's based solely on parking. AB 51 also allows eliminating up to 50% of the required parking within a religious institute whenever they're proposing some housing. If the development is taking away parking, it does allow developers to eliminate that parking. And then it also, with regards to if there's any density bonus concessions, the elimination of parking would not be considered a concession as well. So because there's so many intricacies about this, instead of going line by line, the proposed code language is here on the screen. And in essence, it kind of refers back to any requirements that are established for religious institution affiliated housing development projects will be subject to the government code section as amended, and that's purposely done so that in case any future amendments are done with regards to the Assembly bill, we would continue to be in compliance with those state requirements. So with that, staff recommends that the Planning Commission adopt, or not, I shouldn't say adopt, but recommend that the City Council adopt an ordinance to update the zoning code or the parking requirements of the zoning code with regards to religious institution affiliated housing development projects. And that concludes my presentation.
All right, Eduardo, thank you so much. And any comments, questions for staff? I had one. I was just curious about the housing itself. Is it permanent housing or temporary housing? I mean, how does that work? The actual housing. What we're saying is that housing can be built in parking lots or adjacent to churches, reducing the actual parking that they have on site.
I had a question along those lines too. There's a line in staff report that says any project that would be, I think, eligible for a density bonus. So if you could maybe elaborate on, to capture Brenda's question, what that encompasses.
Sure, and if I'm going down the wrong path, Mr. Kovacevic from our city attorney's office will be sure to interject. But in terms of a housing development project, you know, not just any development project that's proposed on at a religious institution would qualify. I would refer you to bullet point number 2 on page 1 of that staff report, where a religious institution affiliated housing project needs to meet 3 basic tenets and 3 basic requirements. That it's located on 1 or more contiguous parcels. The housing development qualifies as being near or co-located religious use parking, and it qualifies for a density bonus under Government Code Section 65915. So those 3 tenets would need to be adhered to in order for it to be considered for religious affiliated housing development projects. So, and usually what you'll have is you'll see, if anything would come before us, is these religious institutions have these large parking lots, which obviously are used, during congregations that are, but largely empty, for the most part when no services are being conducted. So the whole intent of that was to maximize use of those otherwise, underutilized areas of their properties, to allow for some sort of parking. So for some sort of housing development project. And in doing so, what AB 1851 does is it says, okay, city, yes, if a housing development project does come, to you, you cannot mandate that whatever parking is taken away to accommodate for this development, you cannot require them to to provide the, you know, makeup spaces, if you will. So it is kind of the state, you know, wagging its finger at us to say, you know, thou shalt not do that. And then obviously there are some other requirements that is part of AB 1851, some mandates that the city again cannot use parking as a reason to deny a project. Now, when it comes to the density bonus, so, you know, if a developer comes in and you know, there are some concessions that a developer could make in order to allow them to increase the density of a housing project. That's all governed by the government code. You know, that does allow them to maximize, you know, units on a particular property. What this bill does is it eliminates that parking reduction, if you will, cannot be used. They can't claim that as a concession because, you know, by de facto they're already going to be using up you know, parking spaces for the development of a housing project. So I don't know if that completely answers your point, Commissioner Kuldorff, but if you need some clarification, perhaps we can also get a better opinion or response from Mr. Kovacevic.
Yeah, well, I'm not completely sure about the state legislation that encompasses this, but my original understanding of it was that religious institutions could be developed as senior and or affordable housing. And I think it would be helpful to understand kind of what the back legislation is that this parking, just for curiosity, I know that's not something that we're approved, that's state approved legislation, but what the original intent was.
Well, you know, I think I'm going to have to defer to that one and to our city attorney's office, who keeps tabs of these legislations and perhaps has a better understanding of truly what led to this and their intent. Greg, I don't know if you've caught the issue, but
yeah.
Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think Commissioner Kuldorff's initial question is, when is this triggered? When is a project eligible for a density bonus, and therefore it fits into this scheme? And basically that's affordable housing. And if you look at Government Code 65915, the section that deals with density bonuses, a developer can be entitled to a density bonus by virtue of including as little as 5% affordable component in its development. If it's a very low income unit, then they can be entitled to a density bonus by including, like I said, as little as 5% of the units. Moderate income or low income, I should say, 10%. So that's the answer to your question. It's not that it just has to be located on or adjacent to a religious use. It also has to propose some affordable component, but that component can be very tiny. And I think that's really what you wanted to know.
Yeah, that answers it. I think I at one point heard it was related to senior housing, but maybe that is only senior that has some component of affordable.
You know what? I'd have to take a closer look at 65915. You may be right that senior units entitle the developer to a density bonus, but to be honest, I don't recall off the top of my head if that's the case or not. But certainly an affordable component does.
Okay.
And I think for the most part, senior citizen housing developments will generally be affordable anyway by their nature. For the most part, not all of them, but generally speaking, that's one of the purposes for senior housing, as in the case with Park Vista and El Segundo, of course.
So I have a question. Is the intent of this state law to encourage churches to become developers, or to sell off part of their lands to developers in order to accommodate more housing? Is that really kind of the crux of this bill?
But the legislature views parking lots at religious facilities as underutilized land that could be put to better use. That's as Eduardo described in his presentation. So they see a church, like Eduardo said, for example, that has a large parking lot that's used sometimes just once a week. So the legislature said, hey, let's put that land to better use by overriding the local agency's ability to require this amount of parking, which we think is not a good use of land when we have a shortage of affordable housing.
Gotcha. And so, that's it seems primarily aimed at existing church properties. Does that also carry over to new church development? In other words, if there's a new church that wants to be built, they are subject to 50% of the parking requirements that churches used to be subject to?
Great question.
No, this has to do with eliminating or taking existing parking from existing religious uses and putting it to a better use. This doesn't affect the parking standards for religious uses going forward.
Well, I guess my question is, as we are all looking to do a couple things. One, solve housing problems, housing shortages, and also, I believe there's going to be less reliance on automobiles over the next several decades, and so parking requirements, I believe, should come down. And so as we look to future land use, is that the sort of thing that we could look for? As churches require a lot of parking in existing zoning, and so does that number by default of this particular AB 1851, does that require that any future development of churches changes the parking requirements for our city? Or are you saying that's just a different conversation altogether?
That's a different conversation altogether. This deals with currently underutilized property that's developed for religious use, parking in particular.
Okay, thank you.
But that is a really good point, Jay. That should be another conversation for sure moving forward. I think you're onto something there.
Well, there certainly may be precedent once this happens. So there'll be backward-looking data that says this is probably a good idea to have less parking.
Mm-hmm.
It's a similar conversation, not to get any on an entirely other tangent, but if you can build an ADU in your garage, why do we have zoning codes that have garages? I don't.
Great point.
Parking code comes out in the future.
So just a couple of quick questions, just a basic clarification. So what we're recommending today, or what would be recommended today, this is strictly to get us up to state law, right? What's required by the bill. There's nothing more, nothing less. It's more procedural than anything, right?
I think you're right, Kevin. So far as we all understand it. Mm-hmm.
Yes, it does, and it kind of creates some points with state agencies to that say, hey, El Segundo is on top of keeping up with current mandates.
So did you foresee, or did you guys look at other provisions that we might have within the city that this might conflict with, that we would have to do some cleanup to comply with this particular bill? Or does this code language fix everything? Is this a one kind of catch-all?
Right. I mean, I don't think it really fixes everything, but I mean, it does put us, in a situation that I think, like Mr. Kovacevic stated, it really comes down to existing churches, and and looking at the code generally, there really isn't any conflicts that would arise out of this that need to be corrected.
Okay. And just kind of looking forward, when we did the housing element study session, I recall that there were at least 2 properties on Mariposa that were owned by religious institutions. Were those the only 2? And would they and they would stand to benefit from this, right? This would apply to them, I should say.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
All right, any further questions, comments? May I hear a motion then, if there are no further comments or questions?
I will move to recommend to council to approve the provisions. Is that the correct motion?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. And a second?
I'll second the motion.
All right, it's been moved and seconded, to adopt resolution number 2896, recommending city council approval of this ordinance. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? And that recommendation has passed. Okay, next item is,
Sorry, Commissioner. Vice Chair Newman, I need to do the roll call.
Oh, did I miss that?
Yeah, that's
Well, I
new.
mean, the roll call on
That's
the
new in the
vote.
last year and a half, Brenda. On Zoom call.
On the voting, yes. You
Oh,
have to do it
Very
individually.
good. Sorry, Venus, of course. Go right ahead.
That's okay. Okay, Chair Newman.
Aye for me.
Okay. Commissioner Heschler,
Aye.
Commissioner Keldar,
Aye.
and Commissioner Maguire. I'm sorry.
Aye.
And Chair Baldino is absent.
All right. Thank you, Venus. Next item H is new public hearing, regarding EA-1299, the downtown design review, new mixed-use development within the downtown specific area. The address is 201-209 Richmond Street. And who will be giving a report on that today?
I'm going to go ahead and start sharing the screen, and then I'm going to turn it over to our planner, Maria Baldenegro. So
Okay.
Give me 1 second here. And am I sharing here?
Yep, we got it.
Okay,
Thank
perfect.
you.
So I will go ahead and turn it over to Maria, who will give you a brief presentation.
Okay. Hi, Maria. Thank you.
Good evening, Chairman and members of the Planning Commission. I have this item to present for the downtown. We have Environmental Assessment 1299, Downtown Design Review 2101, and Parking Adjustment 2101. This design review application is for a new 14,000 square foot development. It involves 4 residential units, 14,000 square feet of commercial use area, and 64 parking spaces at 201 through 209 Richmond Street. This slide is a vicinity map of where the site is. It's outlined in green, a lime green. It's in the downtown specific plan within the 100 to 200 block of Richmond Street within downtown specific plan. The aerial view of the site depicts 3 lots. This development is proposed on 3 lots. The corner lot at 201 through 205 is 10,500 square feet and contains an existing 948 square foot brick building. It's the former jail house. The next lot in the middle is the 207 Richmond Street, and it was formerly addressed with 209 Richmond. No changes are being proposed to the lot. The applicant does own this property, and there's some modifications to access that will be explained further in the slide. 209 is vacant. It's a 3,500 square foot lot, and it is part of the development. What's important about this site, it is a corner lot, and it also drops in grade. The highest portion of the grades are on the alley and intersection of Franklin and the alley on the north west corner. The drop in grade is close to 7 feet on the northwest corner of that corner lot. And it's important because there's some relief for lots that have substantial grade drop. And the downtown design review allows some justification to increase the maximum height. So how can we change this so that it's, you can't? Okay. The applicant will retain the 2 brick buildings at 203 and 207 Richmond Street, and a new 3-story structure is proposed measuring 10,500 square feet on the corner lot. The corner lot will contain retail and a cafe on the first floor, office on the second floor, and 3 residential units on the third floor. The 3,500 square foot vacant lot at 209 Richmond Street, farthest from the corner, will contain a 3-story structure measuring 3,500 square feet with retail on the first floor, office on the second floor, and 1 residential unit on the third floor. The proposed development requires 49 parking spaces, and 64 parking spaces will be provided. 2 compact, 4 ADA, and 59 parking spaces in 29 car lifts, totaling 64 spaces. This slide shows the site plan. It shows Richmond Street to the right, and Franklin would be on the bottom. Try to zoom in as much as possible to show clearly what's happening. Richmond Street is one of the streets that already has angled parking, so you could see that there is a walkway that will be retained facing Richmond Street. The proposed development will have an outdoor space for seating if a cafe is proposed. Car lifts will be behind the commercial tenant spaces, and access for the parking is to 3 levels and all from the alley, all from the rear. The retail will have all storefront facing Richmond Street to activate the pedestrian activity, and the stairs to go to the office level is all visible from Franklin, and they will access the upper level residential units as well. So here are the design features. They have an outdoor planter and seating area is proposed adjacent to the sidewalk. A 6-foot wide path will be maintained for pedestrians on the sidewalk. Roof decks are proposed above the first and second floor facing Richmond Street and provide less shade and shadow for pedestrians below at the street level. Roof decks facing the street make the development architecturally more attractive and provide a people-oriented amenity for the residents, visitors, and the employees to enjoy the outdoor climate and views of the city. The proposed design combines 3 different construction materials: concrete construction for the first floor, heavy timber for the second floor, which will add warmth, and proposed steel on the third floor. This is a rendering of the corner view from Franklin and Richmond Street. You could see the decks above. The setback for the second floor is 25 feet, and the third floor also is 25 feet. This is a requirement in the downtown. So the setbacks are both facing Richmond Street and Franklin, and it complies. The additional height is being proposed above, and the iron or steel that's proposed is primarily to bring more light and ventilation to the residential units. I believe it actually adds architectural, not just structural, but almost a sculptural feel. And I think that at the street level, you will not feel that additional height that's proposed. The primary area that has a height that exceeds the maximum 45-foot limit is near the corner of the building at the north west section of the corner lot itself. Nowhere else does it exceed the height. But as I said, you will not feel extra shade and shadow from this additional height, and no one really will feel the mass. So the downtown review process was introduced, and it requires design review for all new buildings and additions greater than 500 square feet. And this review is made by the Plan Commission. New construction in Richmond Street of the downtown specific plan should not adversely affect existing architectural features, historical or aesthetics of the surrounding area. The purpose of the design review process is to ensure that the new development in the downtown specific plan complies with the design standards in Chapter 8 of the specific plan. Design standards for this district are intended to preserve the historical old town character. We have a lot of brick buildings in the Richmond Street area. Additional building height on corner lots shall be determined through design review. The analysis finds that the proposed development is consistent with the Richmond Street district in the downtown specific plan and the El Segundo Municipal Code. The proposed additional height of 3 feet may be granted for the portion of the building that exceeds the height limit. It's still only 3 stories high, and the drop in grade is 7 feet. And the height will only exceed the maximum 45 feet limit by approximately 3 feet. The proposed eclectic design is harmonious with the brick buildings on Richmond Street, and the additional proposed height does not add bulk or mass, since the steel frame at the peak of the building is set back 25 feet from the front property line facing Richmond Street. Second brick building at 207 Richmond Street will also be retained for the project, and a parking adjustment may be granted for the additional proposed car lifts, since a significant historic building is being preserved, and that is the 203 Richmond Street former jailhouse. It is also listed as a significant historic building on page 145. So it's a very big benefit to the downtown to be able to preserve that building. Access to parking is provided in multiple levels from the rear alley, and easements will traverse 207 and 209 Richmond Street from the underground for the underground parking spaces on the corner lot. So I'll show you where that is. So this is the view from Richmond Street, and the brick building that exists is in the middle. This is at 209. The new building at the former 209. The farthest to the corner is the one to the right, and obviously the corner lot is the one to the left with the frame above. This is the view from the alley, and you could see the car lifts. You could see there's going to be a ramp that goes almost to grade level for the Richmond Street side to access the parking spaces directly behind the retail. The other ramp will be coming all the way from the 207 property, the vacant lot, and there's going to be it'll basically ramp all the way down, and it'll traverse the 2 lots, both the existing building in the middle and from the lot on the left. The recommendation is that the proposed project is categorically exempt under CEQA as a Class 32 infill project, and staff recommends that the Plan Commission adopt resolution number 2897, approving environmental assessment number 1299, downtown design review number DDR 2101, and the parking adjustment number ADJ 2101. And that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, Maria. All right, let's fire away. Who has some questions for Maria?
I have just a question for Maria as far as what we're doing today. So if I understand correctly, it's a design review. We are approving a height variance, and we're also approving a parking variance to increase the percentage of lift parking versus what is in current code. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
I have some questions that I don't know if it's for staff or for the applicant, just on the functionality of the parking and the lifts themselves, how those are operated, and how, I guess, they're going to incentivize both employees and people who may be visiting to actually use that instead of parking on the street. I'm curious about the complexity of how to use the lift and how small.
So David Balian, the architect, is present, and maybe he can answer how they foresee the use of the car lift.
Sure. Good morning, or good evening, folks. Sorry, I thought I wasn't ready for the question, but I can briefly describe the lifts. And in fact, if you guys would love to see them installed in action, just a few blocks away, I'd encourage everybody to stop by 212 Eucalyptus Street. We have the identical lifts just recently installed there. The way that the lifts function is there is a sort of key that drops down from the center of the lift. So the folks who occupy the building will be paired. So my coworker and myself, let's just say we share lift number 4. If I arrive in the morning first, I will park my car on the lift, turn the key, and my car will rise. When my coworker arrives, they will park beneath me. If I need to leave early, I will have to ask my coworker to temporarily move their vehicle. I will use the key to lower my vehicle, and I will leave the site, and my coworker will park their car back on the lift. It's, I think, critical to know that the retail spaces or the floor area dedicated to retail is quite small. The majority of the parking will be dedicated to the office use above. And normally in an office condition, you know, you have several people working at the firm, and they get paired up, and we each know where everybody parks. So there's a little bit of management in which space you're going to park in. And so it's very quite simple. It's with the key. So the staff or the occupants will be dedicated to each lift, and there will be a little bit of coordination. And just to clarify that the request is simply to increase the amount of tandem lifts that are allowed. The zoning code only allows 30% of the total, and we're requesting an increase of that 30%. And also just to note, there are other cities like City of Los Angeles, for example, their minimum allowed is 40%, so it's higher than El Segundo's.
Thank you. That's helpful.
So if I can jump in, so how many of those parking spaces will be made available to, I guess, the public or to the retail shoppers versus?
That's a great question. Yeah, that's a great question. So the zoning code has, you know, minimum requirements for per square foot requirements for retail uses, commercial uses, and then residential uses. So, you know, the minimum numbers of each would be dedicated to each use. However, we're proposing a lot more parking than the minimum required. The minimum requires only 49 spaces, but we're providing over 60. So the remaining spaces will be available, I suppose, to either the tenants on the second floor or the third floor residents, or potentially the retail occupants. At this point, like, it's hard to say how many retail tenants or how many spaces the retail will require, how many spaces the residents would require, but the ownership will, I suppose, manage the number of parking spaces available. There are several spaces, like Maria mentioned, that are available that are not in lift configuration. I think there's a total of 6 or so. So those would be available to anybody. And certainly there are a lot more lifts in the basement level and only a handful at grade. Presumably the ones at grade would be available to people visiting the retail establishments, for example. So if I operate the retail business, I would park my car and move it up, and the bottom space will be available for anybody visiting my retail establishment. So there's a good maybe 12 to 14 or so. I'm guessing here, but 12 to 14 available for folks in the neighborhood to visit the site.
Okay, thank you. So I thought I heard in the presentation that there'll be access from multiple streets, from more than one of the streets, but in looking at the pictures or the renderings, it looks like there's only access in the alley. Am I wrong there?
You're correct. So the only vehicular access is from the alley.
Okay, and because it's, I guess, elevated, is there going to be a steep driveway going up or down into the park structure from the alley?
So there's
what is the grade?
Understood. So there's 2 vehicular access points off the alley. The one to the surface lot, let's just say behind the retail, is a very small, gentle rise. You can actually see it in the elevation that Maria was showing. Just right. So do you guys see the brick structure on the very far right-hand side? So just left of that, you can see a very gentle rise from the alley to the on-grade parking area. A little harder to see, but just above where it says 209 Richmond at the far left-hand side of the drawing, there's a ramp down. And so that would be quite a generous wide ramp, which turns right off the alley and then leads to the basement. And that is a sort of a code compliant speed ramp down to the single level below grade.
Okay, thank you. The jailhouse, so it is registered as a historical building, correct? As a historical structure?
Can I clarify? It is not a legitimate historical structure in the state or federal, but it is listed as a historical structure in the specific plan as important to the city.
Okay, so it didn't have to go through any, the state historic preservation officer, any of those processes. Okay. Okay, that answers a number of my questions. So from an aesthetic standpoint, if you go to slide 11, looking at the kind of, we talked about the character of the area, there are a lot of brick buildings and things. From this view, I mean, you're preserving one building, but it's a brick building, but it looks like it's surrounded by these modern style buildings. Did this go through any kind of like aesthetic impact study to determine that, yes, it's keeping, especially, I mean, in context of the jailhouse, you know, since it is a historic building according to our plan, did we go through some analysis that said, yes, we're preserving the look of the block of these 2 streets? Because to me, and I'm not an expert in this, it looks a little conflicting because of the brick versus being kind of engulfed by these modern structures.
Would you like, can I address that question? Maria, am I able to share my screen? Is that okay?
Yeah, hold on. Eduardo will.
Yeah, let's stop sharing here.
Okay, I'm gonna try to share my desktop.
Welcome, Mr. Baldino.
My apologies for being late, everyone, but I'm stuck downtown right now.
It's all right. We're glad you're here. We're on the item 11. Yep. If you've got an agenda.
I got it.
You're stuck downtown El Segundo?
Yeah, I wish.
Okay, can everybody see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. I'd like to kind of address the question and just talk about a little bit about the design. The construction type, as Marie mentioned, is concrete to this level, and then cross-laminated timber to this level, and then steel above. The reason why I wanted to share the perspective is that in elevation, it's a little deceiving because the two buildings look much taller than the building in the middle. But if you look at them in perspective, you can see that the third floors are set back 25 feet. So they are definitely within scale. And then we specifically actually introduced brick to carry over the old brick from the jailhouse into select features of the new building. Additionally, actually, what I also wanted to share are historic photos of the original City Hall, which was on the site. And when we started to look at the design work, what we were really struck by, certainly this type of architecture wouldn't be acceptable today, but what we did find very interesting in this older architecture is the texture of the facade. As you guys can see, there's a really sort of a varied texture in the original brick construction with bands and different types of texture. And so what we did is we took that concept, not literally, but we decided to try a different type of texture on the ground floor with this cross pattern behind the glazing, a much warmer and certainly different type of texture on the second floors that are different from the first floor. And then of course, certainly a very different kind of aesthetic for the third floor as kind of a jewel top to kind of encapsulate the construction. So the final design ended up with not only red brick, but also wood and steel, and red brick certainly at the streetscape, but also exposed concrete, really beautiful board form concrete. So we really did try to have a lot of different materials to be extremely eclectic, as is deserving for the site. And that's how you see the sort of the homage paid to the site, with different textures and a lot of different materials and colors in the new design. Does that help answer a little bit?
It does. Thank you.
I feel like there is one rendering that better depicts how far back that, because I had the initial thought and then I saw one rendering where you could tell that the residential, because my thought was all that glass on the residential units, I just didn't know how occupants may or may not feel about that. But it is, you really can't see it from street level.
Right, that's a great point. Thanks for bringing that up. So here's a view standing a little closer to the development. It's only 2 stories because the specific plan requires that the third story be set back from both elevations at 25 feet. It's only when you step really far back as you can kind of see the residential above. And then as an aerial view, you can see the residences here. And we certainly provided a lot of privacy in the bedroom areas, like you can see on the right-hand side here, in the middle here, and in the far left-hand side here. It is the living spaces that are glazed with really high performance glazing, of course, and certainly if the residents would like, they can install shades as well.
Do you know, are the units for rent or for sale, or has that not been determined?
They're for rent.
And then I do have one more question about the parking, the access, because that alley is a 2-way alley, correct?
Yes.
So are you able to access parking if you are coming from?
Yes, so or if coming north or south on the alley, and I briefly mentioned that the access, parking access were really wide. We definitely studied, it's not shown here, but we studied a left turn and a right turn into the access for the parking. And this is certainly much wider than would be required normally. I think normally it's about 20 feet for commercial developments, and this is a little bit wider to make sure that you can make a left or a right into the parking.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question for staff along Kevin's line? When we get a project proposed like this, and we know we have our downtown specific plans that has certain architectural requirements, use of brick, use of glass, use of different materials, what does staff do to evaluate if those standards have been met?
We verify and make sure some of the materials are used. There is more interest in bringing a new flavor to the downtown. And so the direction that we've been taking is to create a design that not necessarily only retains the past, but also takes us to the future, and brings interest to the downtown. So it's not very rigid. You want to add to that?
And I might like to add too is, you know, we look at, you know, not only architectural style, but we also look at the materials that are used. And of course, that's called out in the downtown specific plan. But we look at, you know, materials that are used out there within close proximity, making sure that they do grab those elements from other properties to continue with, you know, that flavor that downtown is so known for. But at the same time, not totally turning our backs to, you know, to alternative architecture or newer architecture. And I think, as you see here, it does bring in some of those elements of brick and incorporates also the retention of the existing historical buildings to keep that flavor there, while at the same time introducing some new elements, you know, such as the steel and the concrete siding.
Okay, but you don't have like a checklist, right? There's no set checklist like we have for Smoky Hollow where you get so many points for doing this. It's more of a judgment call by staff and seeing if it blends with the neighborhood. Yeah,
and then ultimately that's why we do present it to you as the planning commission. I mean, we, you know, from a staff perspective, yeah, we took a look at it in the context of the immediate area, the neighborhood, saw that we felt that, you know, bringing in all these elements that are currently out there, albeit it's a different architectural configuration or style, it does bring in these elements that keep true to the downtown form.
Okay, thank you.
And I had a quick question. If we could have a front view from Richmond Street looking at it, that far building on the right, or the northernmost building, back up, or maybe one more, maybe number 10.
Oh,
Image
sure.
number 10. Yep. Maybe there. That is that will be new construction, the northern lot, and yes, and that looks fairly different than the southern portion lot over there on the new construction that's actually going to be in the parking lot. Have you created this project for predominantly office space, or you know, coffee house, retail, or residential? The bulk of your square footage is dedicated to what?
I would say the majority is for office/retail. So the ground floor of the corner building is retail. It could be, you know, a big coffee house or two establishments. The second floor is all office, and the third floor is residential. For this building here, the ground floor is retail. The second floor could be retail or office, and then residential above. I do want to also just note that we did borrow elements from the building in the middle, namely the steel support structure, and we did mimic nearly exactly to kind of create a good flow on the facade.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would suggest that the best streetscapes in America have an eclectic variety of materials, but yet kind of hang together in their own way. And so I think you guys have done a wonderful job of doing that. You've picked up this material palette this color palette, and yet each building feels individual. I mean, the worst thing in the world is when you clamp down the design guidelines so tightly that you end up with cookie cutter. And instead, what you've done here is created nice variety. You know, the slope down allows you to have different elevations and different massing, and I think it's going to be an awesome thing.
Thank you.
I guess, can we talk about the things we also need to approve, the height? So it's 48 feet, so 3 feet higher than the 45, but of course we're dealing with the downslope here. And the 48 feet is just in that, tucked into the far northwest corner, is that correct? So, or maybe the elevator shaft or something, is that the thing that's the highest point?
So if you see these dimensions here, so level 1 is right here, and it's actually 45 feet, not 48. And so the portion of the building that's, the way that the specific plan is noted is the slope of the street would be the height limit. So the height limit in theory is not a flat plane, it's a sloping plane. So the portion of the building that sticks beyond the pure definition is this corner here. So if you took this line and you sloped it parallel with the street, it's about, you can see here with this red brick, this corner is
the exhibit that you are showing here. The calcs are shown on different levels. The highest calc is actually shown on the top of that elevator shaft. So that's the one that I was going off of, and that says 146. If my eyes.
Oh, I see. I see. I think the difference is that I believe, and Maria, correct me if I'm wrong, elevator shafts or stair shafts are exempt from the height limit. Am I, Maria can correct me.
That's correct. Yeah. Elevator shafts and staircases can exceed the height limit. They're not subject to the height limit.
Okay. So is there no height variance we're dealing with then? Are we in?
The
Just
height
that
variance
corner.
is primarily, yeah, for that corner.
Where that privacy wall is on the residential deck? Yeah, right there.
Exactly.
Okay.
And it's only that, like, the two triangles, I guess.
Right. So I guess we'd be looking at who might that be affecting, and somebody to the north it might affect. It'd be, you know, I guess affecting the resident in the far northern building. It would affect their view to the refinery, I suppose, but just by a foot or two.
And may I add too, as I think Mr. Bailing has alluded to this. I mean, it's just the function of the topography of the site that results in this corner of this, and albeit it's set back 25 feet away from the street, so you wouldn't really notice that additional 3 feet. And again, it's just purely function of the topography of that site. You know, it slopes down.
So technically, it's 45 plus the difference in fall to the north.
Correct.
All right.
Keep in mind that this is a corner lot, so the grace that's being given for additional height is primarily because a corner lot has to provide 25 feet on both Richmond Street and Franklin. So they give up the whole length of the property, the depth, and the whole width of 25 feet. So because it slopes, there's grace there, and that's the adjustment. The downtown specific plan clearly allows you to make that call to be able to support and approve minor height increase.
Gotcha. Thank you. And then one other question for the applicant. What will the use of the old jailhouse be? Right now it's a marketing firm or something? What's?
It would remain the same
Okay.
same use. Hopefully the tenants will stay.
So there's no other tie-in to the old jail with the exception of where you tie into the roof of the structure, is that right?
Correct. We just tie into the roof because of the height limit and the height of the structures. The two sort of are in the same plane. That's right.
Gotcha. So is that a breezeway underneath there between the two buildings then?
It is a pedestrian access from from Franklin Street to the parking.
Nice, okay, thank you.
Is there an elevator to the third floor of all the residences?
Yes, there's
Elevator?
an elevator for all levels.
But also stairwells for all levels.
Correct.
Both buildings, the northern building as well?
No, the northern building does not include an elevator. The building code requires accessible means of egress, i.e. elevator, if you have 3 residences or more. The other building is only 1 residence, so it's kind of like a private single-family home. Would you guys like to hear a little bit more about the parking, or?
Sure, sure. Yeah, one question I have is, if you have all these lifts, I mean, you have 15 more spaces than are required, but you're getting to that number by adding all these lifts. Is that right? You cannot provide the 49 spaces without doing the lifts.
That's correct. We would be deficient without the lifts. And earlier today, there was a discussion about the future needs for parking, and we've done a few projects that are utilizing these lifts, and we would love to encourage the use of these kinds of technologies. So for the immediate need to have the parking is certainly fantastic, but for the future need to be able to remove the lifts if they're not being required and not today take up a lot more area for parking. So just as the discussion about the religious institutions reutilizing unused land, parking lifts are essentially a new technology, although to be fair, they're not new. The East Coast have been using lifts for decades, but it is somewhat of a new concept in the West Coast. But what it allows you to do is be very economical about it, but also ecologically sensitive, because we are parking more cars in a smaller area, being efficient with parking, which we firmly believe is the right thing to do for the planet.
Okay. And you believe all the lifts will be used for the commercial and not necessarily for the retail and or the residents, is that right?
It's hard to say. So for example, you can see there's only 1,400 square feet of commercial here. That's essentially a Starbucks perhaps, or just in terms of scale. In fact, it's actually not even your typical Starbucks. I think a typical Starbucks is closer to 2,000 square feet. But I mean, you can see the size of a door. It's not a large retail zone. Presumably 1 or 2 or 3 staff on a daily basis. And then however many visitors they get, it just really depends on the type of retail as well. But as I mentioned before, there are a handful of spaces that are available without lifts. And then of course, the first floor of the lifts in theory on this level would be available for your everyday visitor.
Yeah, and all the angled parking on the street.
Certainly.
Hey, my name is Mark Telez. I'm the applicant. Just wanted to, I think everyone's aware of this, but just wanted to highlight that the lifts, we agree we're getting some benefit out of them, but without the lifts, we'd have to knock down the prison. And we made the decision early on that keeping the existing buildings there was an utmost priority. So the only way to deal with the grades and deal with the shoring that we will need around the building to keep it in place was to implement the lifts. So unfortunately, they're kind of like a necessary evil, and maybe evil is the wrong word. They're a necessity in this situation.
Opportunity.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, can you hear me? This is Dennis Cook.
I can, Dennis.
We've had a lot of discussion on this, but we might want to open up the public hearing. I don't know if there's anybody out there, but
I agree. I agree. We should open for public comment. I didn't know I was taking the meeting over for Brenda. I thought being tardy meant I was demoted to vice chair. I'm happy to do so to keep the train on the track, but that's fine, Mr. Cook. Brenda, do you mind?
Not at all, Mr. Baldino. I was expecting that to
Awesome,
happen.
thank you. Are there any other questions for staff on this item?
None for
All
me.
right, thank you. Hearing none, let's go ahead and open public communication. The first right always goes to the applicant, Mr. Tellez, Mr. Bailey. Anything else you'd like to tell us about your project?
We're super excited to be part of this project. Again, my name is Mark Tellez. I'm the applicant, building owner. Such a unique property, especially as we've discussed, it's labeled as historically significant. David and I, we love the history. We love harnessing the history. Hence our motivation to keep the jailhouse, as I just said, and also to keep the former 209 Richmond Street. Actually, we thought it was kind of cool, and maybe all of you aren't aware that these are actually some of the oldest buildings in the South Bay. They were erected in 1917. The city hall there is still there, fortunately. The rest of that parking lot where David showed the pictures from 1950s era pictures, that building was destroyed during an earthquake in the 1970s, and they knocked down that city hall in the 70s, and it's been a parking lot ever since. So we're extremely excited to take part in developing a pretty significant block of the city of El Segundo. Another thing to note is that there's a tall cell phone tower adjacent to the former prison right now. As part of our development, that tower will go away, and a smaller, less obtrusive cell phone tower would be, I don't even know if the tower is the right word, a cell phone area will be reinstalled to the roof of our proposed building.
Thank you, Mr. Tellez.
If I may add one more comment from
Sure.
last time, but I think it is also kind of interesting to note the technology being utilized. Maria mentioned that the building has 3 different types of construction. Usually most buildings have one type of construction. You're either a brick building or a block building or a steel building, but this building has 3 types of construction. So from the second floor down is concrete, and then the middle floor is cross-laminated timber, and then the top floor is steel, as I mentioned earlier. The interesting thing there is that the construction and the design and the technologies being utilized are actually very kind of forward thinking. There are other firms and other projects up in the Seattle area which are using cross-laminated timber to build high-rises. So it really is a technology that we're trying to implement at great cost, but it does bring in a case study of the technology of the construction type itself, there are very few buildings constructed or completed with this kind of technology, especially being 3 different ones. So I think it's fair to say that the building won't be your typical building. Yeah.
Oh, is that wood laminate? Is that structural, or is that just a facade that's over that?
No, it's all structural. So the heavy timber planks come cross-laminated into thick lumber planks. The thick lumber plank is the floor you stand on and the ceiling from below. So the views, actually, I think I have a great photo of a completed project using, just to show you the warmth and the ambiance of the technology. 1 second. Yeah, so here's a photo of the cross-laminated timber, flooring, as well as beams and columns. So the second floor will feel like this.
Beautiful.
Especially with the wood treatments around the glazing. So I just wanted to make sure everybody could appreciate the great lengths the owner is allowing us to investigate and to design a building that's so complex, but also so beautiful in a way.
Yeah, and the objective there was to try to highlight something that might have been around 100 years ago, rather than just doing a conventional steel thing where we know that wasn't around 100 years ago.
Right. And the material palette here is maybe, also interesting to see the warmth of the wood, the white of the steel, the wood mullion system, the brick, the concrete, the block. So there's quite a variety of materials proposed.
Do you have tenants lined up, or can you tell us the types of tenants you're hoping to attract?
The goal will be a cafe or type use and retail use on the ground floor. We do not have tenants likely office or some retail on the second floor, and then definitely residences on top. We currently have a surfboard shop in the building next door, Hayden Shapes. They design surfboards, and they actually have a partnership with a coffee company out of Australia called Great White, and they would love to put a coffee shop on Richmond Street. So they know this building's coming. Will they be the tenant? I don't know, but it's a type of person that is interested.
Is the shaping done right in that building?
No.
Okay.
No. Yeah, it's just retail.
All right, thank you, Mr. Tellez. Thank you, Mr. Baleen. Is there anyone else on Zoom who'd like to make public comments? You could raise your hand or otherwise signal your intention to speak. That'd be appreciated. Maria, Eduardo, do you see anyone?
No, but if Mr. Baleen could stop sharing his screen, and we can also see if there. Please, thank you, and we can see if there's anyone out there who would like to speak. Like, I don't see any.
Okay, well then I will close public communication. All further comments shall come from the dais. One disclosure, I'm losing battery on my laptop. I'm going to switch to my phone. Wish me luck. I'll be right back.
Good luck there, Ryan. I think the project looks awesome. Absolutely wonderful use of that space, and certainly wish the congratulations to the architect. I think that you just have done a great job with that. It's going to be very interesting. I love how it's set back. I love having the mixed use. I think that's very exciting in the downtown, and just a great use of that property.
Okay, thank you, Brenda. Any other comments?
I'll just say again that I feel like the use of materials and the massing is well done, and it's going to beat the heck out of that vacant parking lot that's there now. So I like where it's headed.
I agree, reiterating the same. That is not an inexpensive building to construct. So I appreciate that. We appreciate that. That kind of investment in the downtown in that area goes a long way. So thank you.
I have nothing else to add except that I'm excited for that parcel to be developed instead of looking at a parking lot that I cannot park in. So it'll be good. Thank you.
Right, right. I mean, we have to remember what we're doing here. We're trying to fulfill the whole idea behind the downtown specific plan. We want to give some guidance, but ultimately give flexibility to the developers to have the vision to bring these projects to light. I appreciate how this project is integrating the brick facades and the textures, and I think it's going to be a great addition to that downtown area. Now, are there any other comments? And if not,
actually, one last thing. So, Mr. Baleen, you also designed the building on Eucalyptus. Is that right? That's going up now.
That's correct.
I drove past that today, and I remember, that came before Planning Commission a while back. It's been probably a year, and it just looks awesome. So it's really, it's well done. So if that's any indication of the quality of this work, I think we're in good hands.
Thank you very much.
All right, I'll make a motion to adopt resolution number 2897, conditionally approving environmental assessment number EA 1299, downtown design review number DDR 2101, and parking adjustment number ABJ 21-01.
thank you, Brenda. I will go ahead and second that motion. We have a motion and a second. And can we get a roll call vote on this item, please?
Chair Baldino,
Aye.
Vice Chair Newman,
Affirmative.
Commissioner Keldorf,
Aye.
Commissioner Hessler,
Aye.
and Commissioner McGuy.
Aye.
Okay, the resolution passes 5-0. Thank you, everyone. And thank you to the applicant for bringing this project to town. All right, next on our agenda item, we're going to move on to H4. This is new business. We're going to talk about the determination of consistency of the proposed fiscal year 2021-22 capital improvement program with the City of El Segundo general plan. And can we get a staff report on this item, please?
Sure. Before I turn it over to Mr. Lifan, he's our city engineer in our Public Works Department. Yeah, just to give a little bit of background, this is a general plan consistency finding that needs to be made by the Planning Commission. I just want to note that the Commission is not here to approve any one particular capital improvement project. It's just whether what's listed on there is consistent with the general plan. So with that, I'll turn it over to our city engineer.
Good evening, commissioners. The last time I was here was 2 years ago. My daughter at that time was only 2 years old. Now it's 4. It feels like lifetimes ago, but good to see you all again. So this is for the annual review of capital improvement project for the conformity of the city general plan. And for the most part, it's really straightforward. They are, the land use goal number 7 for the best possible public facility, and number 6 for parks and recreation yield. So I'm here to answer any questions if there's any. So.
Yeah, I do. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. Nice to see you.
Thank you.
Okay, items number 1 are water pipes. Number 3 are sewage pipes.
Mm-hmm.
Are we on schedule with these repairs? I know it's a constant. I see this every time it comes up. Are we behind schedule with sewage and water? What is the status of where the city is with maintaining those two?
I think we're on schedule. We have a 10-year. We have just developed a 10-year plan on water pipe replacement as well as the sewer pipe replacement. And as for the sewer, we are scheduled to do citywide camera inspection again. The last time we did it was in, I think, 2012. So normally you do this every 10 years. And from all the deficiency that was discovered from the last video inspection, we more or less fixed it. So it's been 10 years, so we will do a citywide video inspection again to try to see, how the pipes holding up after 10 years. So we are on schedule.
Okay, thank you. And now I want to talk about the street improvements on Arena Street.
Okay.
There's a couple of options there on how to address repairing the sidewalks.
Mm-hmm.
Can you confirm that none of those trees will be removed during the street improvements?
So I cannot confirm it because it's really up to the community, city council, as well as the planning commission will have their input, because that's the purpose. And we present this to the CPAC committee first, and their opinion is, let's not rush into it. Let's do a study, present different options, and so to get community input. So this, at the end of the day, is not going to be a step-driven decision. That's my feeling of this.
Okay, that was my question. You had several options, and then there's a price.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to make sure that you were talking to the neighbors, we're talking to the community about how best to address this, because that's got to be one of the most beautiful streets in town.
That's
without a doubt, because of those trees.
Absolutely, that's the whole purpose of this. Otherwise, we wouldn't single this out because we try to save it and try to have all possibilities on the table, including some more radical ones, like turning it into a non-vehicle travel street will be also, but that way all kind of options could be on the table.
Right, and I know the city has accommodated trees before. We made a windy sidewalk in Library Park to save some very old trees. So I'm glad to hear that this is going to have a public hearing, and we're going to get some community input before anything is done on that street.
Right, and absolutely, the goal is to save the tree. So that's the origin of this project.
Great to hear that. Great to hear that. Now I want to talk about the interior improvements to the City Hall the fire station carpet replacement, the ADA bathrooms, and the police adding the women's shower. I've got no problem with immediately doing the ADA and immediately doing the women's shower. That's fine. But aren't we going out for a proposal to redesign the Civic Center? Aren't we looking for a developer to come in and tell us what we can do with City Hall and the fire station and the police station?
Yes, we are. So I think, you know, what you could get into is maybe a bigger question I can answer. Maybe I need some help from Dennis. For me, let me try to answer the best way I can. The direction I'm under is try to make this as livable as possible with the given condition that we still need to do the necessary improvement, because we just don't know how long the redevelopment is going to take. It's going to be 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. That is the kind of a big direction that you know, I may not be able to answer.
Can I add to the response? Good evening, commissioners, Mr. Chairman. This is Elias Sassoon, I'm Public Works Director. To add on to what LaFont said, some of these windows we have issues with respect to the safety, and they are lit, and there are cracks on the windows and on the painting, and we really don't know how many years, as LaFont indicated, it'll be before this gets to be redeveloped. So for all those reasons, we really need to tackle this project. More importantly, more than anything else, is the safety of our employees and the residents who come to City Hall.
No, I'm all for safety and ADA access, but I think the price tag for installing like laminate flooring because there's carpet in the fire department and we're worried about a fire in the fire department is a bit of a stretch. My concern is that we're going to spend these funds to make improvements on a building that 5 years from now, we may be presented how we're going to tear this down and build something else. So maybe I need to understand what the timeline is for this proposed redevelopment of the Civic Center. And I don't know if you can, or Dennis might have more information on the estimate.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, it's many years away. We're just getting around to hiring a couple developers that will do a couple of proposals. They'll go through a public process to get one developer. We don't know yet if we're going to be moving the police and fire stations, if we're going to be keeping them on site. If we're going to move them, there's no other location that has been found. There's no funding set aside for it yet. So I think 10 years would be optimistic. To get this done, 20 years would probably be more likely, or somewhere in between there. It's just a long range project. And we're starting the planning now, but in the meantime, we need to continue the upgrades on the buildings. I'm not familiar with the fire department part directly. Elias would have to answer that.
Right. Let me add on to that. Thank you so much, Dennis. Mr. Chair, personally, myself and the city manager, we made the inspection of the facility, looked at the carpets. A big portion of the carpet was flooded with sewage, with backing sewage from the commode, and it is still it smells. It's contaminated, in my humble opinion. The carpet is over 10 years old, and it is in a despair status. And both myself and city manager, we strongly believe that this is a fair request from the fire department, and a good money well spent for the safety of our safety officers and fire department personnel. And in the communication that the city manager made with the city council, there seems to be they seem to be in agreement with that as well.
Okay, so maybe explain to me the process. Do the individual police and fire make requests, and then Public Works and the city manager do inspections, and then these are presented to the commission, this CPIC commission?
Yeah, almost. So the request, when we have a CIP project, we include everything that comes to us from different clients. Well, we don't have Rec Park anymore. We have Community Services Department. we have fire, we have police, we have residents, and typically also not only that, but council members as well as the planning commission members and everybody. So we have the whole list of the projects that they want on the table. It goes through a process with a committee, CIP committee, CPAC, and we value and we put score. They put this score to these to all these projects, and they in a way they prioritize them, by scoring, and the staff helps them to do that. And then once they do, then they will be reflected on the documents, and we make sure that the staff will make sure about the integrity of the projects. We make sure that there is at least there is a need for those projects, and we concur with it. In fact, we do that before we even score them. And then after that is done, then we'll bring it down to the planning commission, make sure that consistency with the general plan is there. And then after that is when we plan to come up with a schedule of having those projects designed and implemented, if that makes sense.
It does. Were there projects that did not make this list presented to us, that either didn't score high enough or there were too many projects and not enough funds?
So yeah, a lot of there are a few projects that got deferred. It's mostly building repair to next year, because this particular year there's almost no general funds available for capital improvement project. So the projection is things will picking up the second half of this year. So hopefully next year should be back to normal. That's the projection from our finance director. So there are a few building maintenance that defer to next year.
Yeah. So let me add to that, Mr. Chair. There are times that residents contact staff for, say, a proposed traffic signal light at a particular intersection. We know it's not warranted. We do the study, and obviously, if the warrants are not met, they're not gonna make to the list, if that makes sense. So yeah, the staff really safeguard these requests as they come in. As you know, and as we go forward, we try to accommodate everybody. But just that was an example. And there are people who want traffic signal light at many intersections. We just do not. The warrants just do not meet, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. And then I noticed the only items that weren't scored are these water discharge items, but those are mandatory. The city has to do those, correct?
So those from the beginning, the CPAC committee, when it was established, the purpose was to rank the project that using general funds. So for like water and sewer, those has its special technicality in terms of how to rank the priority. Those not the purpose of the CPAC. So that's why they are not a score, as well as any road project. For the most part, they were using special funds, gas tax, Prop C, Prop Measure M, Measure R. So those are got its own technicalities in terms of the road conditions. And so the CPAC committee does not rate those as well. So you can see those are ranked. It's really there's some project that originally was thinking it would have been kept a general fund project. For example, the police women's locker room upgrade. When it was presented to the CPAC committee, originally was presented using general fund. However, because this year we have almost no general funds, and the finance director, provided his insight, trying to locate a fund to get some of this high priority project funded, and he was able to find that excess forfeiture, as well as the development impact fee to fund that project. So that's just one example of why that one has a score, even though it's not a general funded project, but that was originally intended for a general fund project.
Thank you for that explanation. Those are my questions. Any other questions for staff from the dais?
Can we go back to that water main maintenance question? This exercise is always challenging for me because I realize that what we're talking about isn't really what we're here to vote on, right? So this all meets code. It's all consistent with planning. So it's just, I think, really for our education and maybe to have the conversation in a public forum in advance of what council will get. But for instance, the water main maintenance question. So it says we have 57 miles of pipe and many date back to 1930s and later, and they have a 50-year life. So we are well beyond that. So do we have a number of, like, how many miles of those 57 have been replaced and are up to today's standards?
So a lot of it has, you know, when you say replace, a lot of, some of it been replaced already, you know, but it could have been replaced like 40 years ago. So I don't know whether, you know, that counts, but let me answer it in a different way. So we typically replace water main some 2 miles a year, I would say, on average. So, you know, that in terms of percentage, that's 3 to 5% of each year as the turnover replacement rate. So maybe that's probably a better way to answer the big picture question.
Okay, so if you have 2 million spread out over the next fiscal year, each 2 million buys us a couple of miles of new pipes.
Yes, and keep in mind, the water facility is not just piping. We also have reservoir, elevator tank, and some of the other underground facility you don't see. So it's for everything.
Yeah. Let me add to that, if you don't mind. We really do not have the statistics. The way it works in practicality, we do know the water lines. If they tend to cause problem, we have a lot of breaks in those lines, and we know where they are. The good news is that luckily we really do not have a big problem with majority of our pipes, the pump stations, the elevator tank, the storage tanks. So we are really lucky, and a lot of communities are not as lucky for various reasons. But right now, I think our previous generations, whoever installed those, they put them in a nice trench with a nice backfill, so the integrity of the system is well preserved. The lines that we concentrate are the ones that we have. We have often breaks and they pose an issue, and those are the ones that are targeted for repair.
So there is no comprehensive assessment of which lines have been repaired when. We're fixing lines when they break on a matter of priority.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we know exactly how many and what areas those pipes and at what at what time were replaced. I'm not sure if the statistics is there, and I can look into that. I don't know if you have that, but we are really not having a lot of difficulty with most of the parts of the water distribution system as well as the sanitary sewer collection system. But you're right, we target the ones that pose problem for us. LaFawn, do we have a good statistics about what percentage of the lines currently meet all the specifications?
We track all the lines has been GIS, tracked. It's just a matter of how to pull the statistic, and so it's whatever you want. We pull it from a database, but it's not from, off the top of my head. I don't want to give anything unless it's accurate. But anything data statistic that you actually want, we can pull it from the database because we have it. What year of the pipe and when it was replaced, it's all in our database. It's just a matter of, going into it, extract it.
Okay, thank you. Michelle? Yeah, go ahead.
So the grade separation project fascinates me. So it looks to be a 3-way grade separation where on Park Place they probably don't have enough lead to go under to create an underpass unless you go back like a quarter mile, and it budgets $5 million for design and construction would ultimately be probably like a $40 to $70 million project. So I say all that to ask, is this in there kind of as a placeholder, or that do we expect this to happen in that fiscal year? Because I think that the reality of it with just looking at it from the cost, I mean, the Alameda corridor grade separations are costing in the $100 million range, or, pushing up to the $100 million range. We have $5 million budgeted. Are we budgeting things for the sake of budgeting them, or is this a holdover of some sort? I'm just curious.
So that particular project is a 3-year long design. So we have a $5 million grant from Metro, and we have a very specific schedule to complete the design. So the funding agreement is basically asked to be complete in December 2023. So because all the investigation we have to do, it's a very big project, and it's typical for a typical project of this size to take multiple years. And for this particular one, it's going to be a 3-year process for the design. And then after that, it really depends on the right-of-way acquisition, because the city does not own all the property that is required to build this. So it would be the land acquisition will be probably the biggest hurdle to get through. And the other one will be the funding, because currently this project is not really funded for construction; it's funded for design. So once those two big hurdles can be overcome, then construction-wise, it's also probably a similar 2 to 3 year, probably more on the longer end in terms of construction. But those are the big 2-if hurdle that we have to get overcome.
Okay, thank you for that. It reads as if the total project, the budget includes construction. So, and it clearly it doesn't.
No, the $5 million just for the design.
Yeah, right. Yeah, but the agenda packet with the one pager for it reads as if it includes construction.
Yes, the all together is probably anywhere from 70 to 100 million. So the purpose of the design is to figure out a more precise number, but that's the ballpark. It's going to be a very costly project.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff?
Jay is speaking, but he's mute.
Sorry about that. I've got a question on a much more pedestrian level. The Safe Routes to School projects, can you tell us a little bit about those and what those entail? And also, as it relates to budget, there's $110,000 in there, but it says based on 80% construction cost to be funded by Safe Route to School grant. So is the $110,000 our contribution, and then the grant funds the other 80%?
Mm-hmm. So very good question. So we had done a study with the school district to present, what the options to improve around the school. So the proposal is have the city funded the design first. The design is probably going to cost somewhere around $50,000. And once the design is done, now we can pursue the Safe Route to School grant, which require 20% match. So the other $50,000 it's really for the matching, and then the goal is to get the other 80%, which is really we're looking at another 250,000 from the grant and in order to really able to construct the project. So that's where the 100,000 coming from. 50,000 for design, and then the other 50,000 is for 20% matching.
Okay. That makes sense. So what will be designed? What are some of the parameters of those Safe Route solutions?
So the design will around all, I think it's 5 or 6 school in the surroundings, and it's about enhanced crosswalk, and then it will also look at the drop off at the street to see where the drop off shown will be. For the most part, there's a lot of it to do with striping, and then but also doing some ADA ramps around the school. And so there's at the crossing, and potentially could be other enhancement. But for the most part, the goal is to be a quick constructible project. So
let me add to that, if you would. That's exactly what LaFawn said. But basically, these safe routes to school, it'll consider an area within about a mile radius of every school, and they look at the existing sidewalks and see if there is any sidewalk missing or not, or if there is any sidewalk that is broken that has to be replaced. They look at all the ramps. They also look at the striping. They also will analyze what intersections you'll have the most pedestrians and kids that want to cross the street, and if that is enough to warrant for a traffic pedestrian light that would stop the traffic and for safe crosswalking the kids basically. Striping is also a big part of it, and the other phase to that is we are going to look at the traffic management plan for every school to make a determination that whether or not we have for every school a proper traffic management plan, which means every student who can drive or every parent who brings the kid to the school, what is the route, where is the drop off, where do they pick up the kids, and whether or not that queue is gonna extend onto public right of way. And the intentions are to come up with an efficient, if you would, traffic management plan that the schools would adhere to and share with parents and the staff and everyone, and establish what those routes ought to be for efficiency and safety. And I'd be glad to elaborate more if you would like for me to.
No, thank you, Elias. That's very helpful. And it's always my hope that we are developing solutions that are less reliant on increasing car counts and more reliance on safe pedestrian routes, bikes and kids on foot, because ultimately that's better for everyone.
Right.
Let's not add to the cars on the street. Let's make safe ways for kids to get there on foot or on bikes.
So just to be clear, what Elias referred to, the traffic management plan, there will be phase 2, but but not part of the proposed budget this year. It will come after this year. Just I want to make that clear.
Right. And Jay, just so that you know, we are talking about already some roads that a lot of cars are on those roads, and in order to allow the kids to walk safely and cross those streets, then there may be a need for a pedestrian light for pedestrians. I'm not sure if I made it clear.
Absolutely.
So part of is exactly what you're talking about, to allow the kids and the kids that have bikes to cross those very busy intersections where currently are not signaled or signalized, so they could cross the street safely.
Great. Thank you.
Any other questions for staff on this item? Okay, not hearing any. Thank you for the presentation, both of you, and the information. I'll now open this item up for public communication. Eduardo, can we see if there's anyone in the public who has any comments on this item?
Seeing the makeup of this meeting, I don't see anyone from the public on this meeting, so I think we're good.
Okay, thank you. I'll close public communication. Any further comments from the dais?
None for me.
Okay, I would like to state that even though we're being asked just to determine if these improvements fall within the general plan, which they clearly do, if you could express to City Council at least my concern of maintaining the trees at Arena, and at the end, Elias, if you can hang on, I'm going to have some homework for you during the Planning Commissioner comment section tonight, if that's okay.
Sure.
Thank you for that. Okay, if there aren't any other comments or questions, I'll go ahead and accept a motion on this item.
I'll make a motion to approve these and send them to City Council.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second, and can we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes, Chair Baldino,
Aye.
Vice Chair Newman,
Aye.
Commissioner Heschler,
Aye.
Commissioner Keldorf,
Aye.
and Commissioner Magai.
Aye.
Okay, item passes 5-0. Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda is a report from our Director of Development Services.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. I'll be brief, but just a few quick items. As you know, I'm the interim director. They've been making a lot of progress towards hiring a full-time director. There've been interviews. I think they have a candidate that they're talking with. It may be within 30 days where that person is on duty. And so we're hoping for that. And then as a follow-up to that, we're working on the list to create for the planning manager position that's been vacant for a long time also. The idea is to get that list reduced down to a few people. And when the director starts, that'll be one of their first priorities to fill that planning manager job. And then after that, we have an associate planner we want to get filled. So there's a lot of progress occurring there. With that said, the remaining staff, they've been working hard on some very large projects with the help of a lot of consultants because we just don't have enough people to go around. Just to make the commission aware of some of these large projects you're going to be seeing maybe as soon as September, but this fall, the Catalyst project, which is the controversial 2 office buildings and associated parking structures, kind of at the eastern end of Smoky Hollow on both sides of Grand Avenue. We expect to have those to you in the next couple of months. The Pacific Coast Commons, which is the 262 condominium units, apartment units with several condominiums and some retail on the PCH. We're starting to narrow that down. The environmental impact report is about done. We're negotiating some of the conditions of it right now, and we hope to have that to the commission here pretty soon also. And then beyond that, the Standard Works project on El Segundo. If you're familiar, under construction now in Smoky Hollow, you'll see that the framing going up for a fairly large building. And there's 2 sister buildings associated with that we're working on. And there's some issues we have to work through, but we hope to have that to you this fall also. Those are each about 60,000 square foot office buildings. And then another project that there'll be some controversy probably associated with is on Mariposa, right by the Mormon church. We have a 15-unit condominium project proposed that we're working on that we expect to have to you this fall also. So, you know, we're very busy right now. There's a lot of activity going on in the city. Then the last item is when can we get back live? I think we all want to. I'm grateful for the opportunity we have to even function this way, but it's not the best of all worlds. The communications is difficult. And so I'm really hoping we can get back soon. The council is already back in a hybrid version. And so I don't see any reason why in the very near future we can get back and have live meetings again. And as soon as I get some dates, I'll let you know. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cook. And I hope when the new hire is finally selected, you'll be able to stay on to help transition that.
Yeah, that's up to the city administration. I've offered to help with the transition as best I can. So I'm available for whatever is needed, yes. And thank you.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Cook. Next item on the agenda is report from our city attorney. Anything to report?
Nothing from the city attorney's office tonight.
Okay, thank you, Greg. That brings us to planning commissioner comments. Even before we spoke about the water lines, the sewer lines, and the status of that, I've been getting a lot of questions about ADUs. And so I'd like to ask again for my update on how many ADU permits we have in the city. I'd like to see kind of the same format we have, the size of the ADUs, the number of ADUs, location of ADUs, how many are in the process. But then with respect to the upgrading of our water and sewage, if there is a database where we can gather the information to tell us how old these lines are or when the last time they were replaced is, can we have that information presented to us so that at least we've captured that and it's been published in some type of public forum?
So I can talk about the water and sewer. Yeah, we could do that. I imagine as many miles as we have in terms of water and sanitary sewer line, it's going to take a while for us to go through that analysis. But I imagine that we would be able to do that. But it might take some time. But we can certainly put that information together for you.
I appreciate that very much. Thank you. Thank you, Elias.
Sure.
And those are my comments. Any other comments from the planning commissioners?
I'd like to just, I guess, reiterate what I said earlier today when we were talking about the new project on Richmond. It's been exciting to see some of these new buildings come up in town, particularly on the other side of PCH, that came before Planning Commission, you know, a year, 2 years ago. I'm thinking of the one on Douglas that the cafe, you know, the kind of cafe concept, the food court concept is looking great. The building on Eucalyptus looks really fantastic. And I guess I just want to thank staff for putting these eclectic, interesting buildings into the mix. Certainly all the applicants that have done that, but it's really great to see our city coming together with these great, cool, modern buildings. And I know Smoky Hall is just going to be an additional extension of that. So it's exciting times.
If I could add a comment to that, I was just in a meeting with the Hackman Capital folks the other day, and their large 500,000 square foot conversion they're doing on Douglas, where the old, was it Northrop, I think, that's 100% leased out. They've got Beyond Meat is taking, I don't know, 250,000 square feet. L'Oreal is going to make it their West Coast operations. They're up to 140,000 square feet. So it's an exciting market we're in right now.
Well, 6 months ago, I think we all were really looking over our shoulders, wondering what was going to happen with commercial real estate. And with COVID and the fact everyone works from home now, but I am seeing evidence around the country where people are coming back to work, and you know, things are different. There's no question, but I'm optimistic that the office and creative space will still continue to be strong here in El Segundo.
Yes.
Let's hope. Any other comments tonight?
Well, I heard the hotel occupancy is over 92%, and that's great news. It's really coming back, so that's all positive.
All right. If there are no further comments, then once again, my apologies for my tardiness tonight. And thank you everyone for the meeting and all the hard work you put in. We are adjourned.
No problems, Ryan, we had.
Yeah, thank you, Brenda. I appreciate it.
Well,
So we are adjourned. Our next meeting will be July 22nd at 5:30 p.m., hopefully in person.
Yes, hopefully.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you all, everyone.
Good night, everybody.
Have a great night.
Thank you. All right.